Hey people, good morning and good evening as per your time zone. I'm sorry we are 4 minutes late, had some technical issues out there, but now we are live with Tim. Jerome, I wanted to bring in another guest, Carl Patterson, but looks like he is having difficulties too in joining in. So we'll wait for some time before he comes in. But then we are having Tim Jerome right from Albuquerque, US. Very good morning, Tim.
Good morning.
Wonderful. So, in the meantime, till Patson doesn't, comes in, I'm just looking at my messages, uh, but looks like he is still having some difficulties. But why don't we discuss on something? Uh, Give me one quick second.
That would be great. So we Oh, it looks like Carl is that Carl?
Yeah, he said that. Yeah, it was Carl. He's still having difficulties in joining in, but
Okay, so so
yeah.
let's go ahead and talk. We've been inviting a lot of people here, and they're incredible, deep and brilliant experts, and we're finding some themes, not just in transitioning through this major time that we have, but actually what they've observed in their careers as they learn to become experts and even master their area of study. And let's go ahead and reflect on that a little bit. It seems like they have a lot of things that are common. Number one, there is not a lot of understanding of how to formally manage and formally lead. It seems that
Mhm.
workers don't understand that, and it seems that leaders don't even understand that either. That's really strange. I've heard, and I've observed and I've understood that the leaders actually set the tone and set the expectation. But it's been really enlightening for me to hear these people and say, have them say that workers themselves have to understand how to lead, and they have to understand the mechanisms of emotional intelligence and these kind of things. It's very
Mhm.
refreshing for that. What was your surprises on hearing all of these people?
Yeah, I mean, since ever since this pandemic came in, one thing that has increased is the job applications. Uh, I see it all over the places, right? From LinkedIn to Facebook, to my inbox, to my HR inbox. It has increased, and I'm sure people out there would agree to this hard fact. Now, there has been people. I mean, they have spent like 5, 10, 15 years with the company, but they still got laid off. Uh, I mean, how do you see this overall area when when you have devoted your time and expertise for like 5, 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden, due to some issue, some pandemic, some profit and loss management, people are asked to leave. How do you see this?
So I'm a student, right? And back in 2000 and 1999, that's when I started my graduate work. A lot of my teachers were promoting Peter Drucker, and a few of the teachers were promoting Deming. And so I was looking at those authors, and they were both saying these are crazy times. And Drucker especially spoke very directly to this. He wrote an article in HBR, Harvard Business Review. You can find it online if you want to. Just look up the term managing oneself. Okay. And he said to the world community, guys, corporations are not lasting longer than careers of people. And you have to expect by the time you're 40 or 50, you're going to be laid off and you're going to have to think. Now, what Peter did was he said, here's the prescription. And he gave a prescription for people back in 2000 to 2005. Number one, number one, know yourself. Number two, have a strategy. Run your life as a corporation. Manage by objective, and your objective is to be in the black ink the rest of your life, no matter what it takes, right? Management by objective. And he said, here's how you do this. Play to your strengths, not to your weaknesses. Make sure your weaknesses don't take you down. Your first job in your life has to be where you learn the mechanisms of working and the mechanisms of finance, both in business and your personal life. Your second job in life is supposed to be your love. It's supposed to be your pursuit of what you're supposed to be doing. Now, I was thinking about this and I said, oh, that's brilliant. Someday if that ever happens to me, and lo and behold, 5 years later, 2012, it happened to me. And I took his word to heart. And I listened very carefully to some emerging influencers and experts in the area of motivation and business and the gig economy and all of these areas. And they were saying the same thing. And I mapped out these trends and I mapped out these behaviors of successful people who actually overcame this successfully. And I expected this. Now, I did not expect the pandemic. I did not expect something world changing. Deming Rucker said it's going to happen. Something goofy is going to cause a hockey stick. Something's going to go, boom, and everything in the world's going to change. They knew it. I wasn't ready for that. And so having 40 million people in the course of 3 months lose their jobs in the United States was a trauma. It wasn't something that's news. It's traumatic. It's hitting all of us individually, even those who have jobs. And I considered it my purpose in life at that point. When I saw this happening and coming up, I said, okay, I got to get this stuff out here. So it literally changed the direction of my life when I heard that. This is big. And again, and knowing that we've been talking about this for 3,000 or 4,000 years in our civilization, we are the species that are ready for the unknown if we are only able to step up. Gives me not just hope, but gives me a chuckle to understand that, if we just put our minds and our backs to this, we'll not just overcome, but we'll thrive in this. And again, we have in our folklore, in our books, in our magazines, we have stories of people who do this. And what we don't know as individuals is that's us. Successful ones are us. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. You mentioned about Pursuit. Pursuit of Happiness is the movie that I've seen long back. Have you seen that?
No, I'll put it
No?
down.
Okay.
I'll put it
Yeah,
down.
it's a lovely movie. It's a lovely movie. You must watch that once at least. That talks about your every moment, uh, how special you make it, and what is your takeaway from that moment is only you have to decide and define that. Now, people who has lost a job, uh, who have been hit due to this pandemic. I mean, what kind of uh, services as an Ijona Academy uh, you are planning it? Do you have any roadmap for that?
Oh, yes. Wouldn't it be great if you could actually reach out to somebody and say, okay, the bottom's fallen out. What do I do now? And having not just a bunch of skills, but having people who have gone through exactly what you've gone through, and not just a class or a certificate, but creating a community of people who have gone through the same experience and are walking through this together, and understanding that as you grow and get strength, you have an opportunity to contribute and grow as well. That's what I've been looking for, basically. There and to give you an idea, when you lose your job or you have a major life change, it's a shock, it's trauma, and just like any other trauma, you're not going to be functional for a few weeks, and you have to expect that. And just having somebody to reach out and say, yep, that's normal. You're doing exactly what every other human on this planet is doing, and we're here. And that's the thing. There's 5 things. Again, I talk about this all the time, and people get tired of me talking about it. But there's 5 things that you can actually do to either move out of this position of helplessness or move forward into leadership or another career or just progress. And it's good for groups, it's good for individuals, and it's good for communities. And I hate to go on about this, but again, anytime I have a public forum, I want to stress this. Understand the best way to learn, to acquire knowledge and learn how to use it to make your life better. If when you lose your job, you have open time, don't just learn a skill or certificate, learn how to learn better, and find that. And this is something that's not taught, it's inferred. We hear this thing called tacit knowledge, which is sort of, you can't describe it well. There's ways to describe it, and we've been describing it again for 3,000 or 4,000 years. It just hasn't been put down in a document very well. Number 2, having, like you said, having a reason to pursue something. Like you said, with pursuit of happiness. Happiness may not be the end all and be all, but having something that moves you forward. For me, when I lost my job, it wasn't hitting bottom. It wasn't hitting rock bottom. Hitting rock bottom's a good sign, right? I wanted to slow my descent. I wanted to figure out how I could sew a parachute before I hit the ground. And that was what drove me. That was what I woke up with. That's what I went to sleep with. And eventually that transitioned into my life's work, right? My self-actualization. It doesn't matter what you have, but something that's meaningful to you, that you're willing to stay up till 5 a.m. struggling with, right? When you're doing things like that, when you're working on it and you say the time went by quickly, you're working on something good. And that's a sign you're working on something that is meaningful to you. And then having people who have your back. The worst thing you can do in a crisis is say, I've got this. Yeah, being isolated. And so you need people around you. You need people who have gone through things with you, and you need people who are called your trusted advisors. We'll get into this later. The people around you need to be both trusted advisors and worthy adversaries. they're not competitors. They're people who make you step up and be better. And these are the people you want to talk to. And even if you have to talk to them daily, just having them on speed dial and basically have them talk you down when you're stuck in an emotional cycle. I do this a lot for people, and the academy should be a place where people feel they can go to and say, I have this problem, I don't know how to go through. And number 4, having something that you can actually push and push and push against. It's called your obstacle. I talk about this all the time. You can shovel sand, you can shovel rocks, but when you get to the big rocks, those are the things where you learn the most. Those are where you really build your muscles. And we as humans tend to shy away from the big rocks. And the big rocks means that you're making incredible progress. And so when you hit that big rock, that's where you need to focus the most. And that's where your group, your trusted advisors, lend their shoulders as well as their kind words. And finally, solitude. I don't advise solitude initially when you lose your job, but I do advise solitude as part of the recipe. It seems that all great people go out into the forest or the desert and cut themselves off from society at a certain time in their lives. And they come back, quote unquote, changed, which is beautiful. We see this in our folklore. We see this in our books of philosophy. These are the people who are the ones who bring back the new wisdom. And I do, after you have your feet under you, after you've hit the ground, after using the parachute you made, using solitude. It's not something that is your enemy you have to make good with. It's a tool that you can use to actually create your own code of ethics, your own reason to be on this planet, your own path forward. And this is important. I can't stress this enough. Once you identify your progress and your path and your career as mine, it takes on a whole different meaning. This is mine. And getting back to this whole academy, having a community that doesn't just say goodbye to you after the certificate's over and they just don't ignore you. They actually are there to support you and keep bouncing ideas off of you. This is what society's supposed to be. This is what the guild system was supposed to be back in historic times. This is what progressive education was supposed to be, where a professor and a student were to be working together for their entire careers. This would be brilliant. It may not, it may not end up that people stay in touch, but having that objective and knowing that you have a group, a community, and individuals that have your back gives you the confidence to actually put your shoulders against those big rocks that you've been ignoring. And that's what I'd like people to consider the academy as. It's a learning institution. It's a place of great expertise, but at the same time, it's a community that has your back as long as you need someone to help you work through issues to solutions that you can actually not just utilize, but you can actually stand behind.
Right, right. Tell me this, unemployment, does it lead to entrepreneurship?
It can. Okay, entrepreneurship and the gig are buzzwords. Okay,
Mhm.
and I don't see it. They're really hard to interpret, especially in the United States. We had this whole understanding of the gig economy. Let me give you a perspective. Back in 2004, my corporation they gave pink slips to 5,000 middle managers. Think
Mhm.
about being in the middle of your career and being said, we're giving you a package. Go off and become an entrepreneur. It's great. You'll love it. And what they were doing, the intention, of course, was they were cutting costs. And we won't go into the impact. This is something that you and I should explore. in this in future shows. You know, what's the impact to a corporation when you remove middle management? And it does cut costs because these guys can be expensive, and it seems that they don't do anything. But again, we'll talk about this, you know, in future shows. But think about being in your 40s and 50s, and you go home and you say, honey, I have an opportunity. I'm going to create my own business, and I have 4 months to do it. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. It's going to happen within 2 or 3 to 10 years that you're going to be stable. And so, you know, this again, with the Gartner hype cycle, we went through this whole thing of owning your career and owning your success and finding out what the complexities were. And now we're starting to see this entrepreneurship as being big. And a gig actually is just that. And you can think of entrepreneurship as the backlog of the objective of maintaining fulfillment and revenue, where a gig is basically a sprint in agile. And I see it more working like that. And all of a sudden, corporations are not investing in people as much because they all of a sudden saw this as an opportunity to remove cost. Once you have once you've gotten into a cycle of cutting costs, that the only cost you can cut are labor costs. You know, right now it's great for companies because they can cut brick and mortar, but we're going to go back into a cycle where we need to cut people and people and people. And it's not cutting people, it's cutting benefits, and it's cutting cost, where most of the corporation is a cost center. And so we have to figure out really quickly how we're going to create a stable environment that can sustain people and help them feel a little bit safe in this unknown territory that business theory is taking us into. It's frightening. It's really frightening. But again, I think a lot of smart people who have each other's backs, who are able to actually read things and take information from all these different industries and different cultures, I think we have an opportunity to do this in such a way that we can actually land on our feet more and more and more. And as we share information, the people who are going to come up in the next 30 years who get pushed out of the nest, you know, because the nest wants more and more money, we can help them quicker and better. Yeah, it's entrepreneurship is not a way of life. It's not a career. It's a survival mechanism, and we have to call it what it is.
Right, right. You mentioned that you yourself lost a job when you
Uh-huh.
were working with Intel. Can you share that experience when you got that pink slip? What was running in your mind, and what happened next? And how did you shape it up the later part of your life?
So
I'm sure then after you never joined the company, right? You got into training and teaching and stuff.
actually, I bought into a small corporation, and it was by accident. So
Uh-huh.
let's trace this out. So here I was 12 and a half years into a major corporation that was known to be very challenging, you know, and to be in it for 5 years is a powerful statement. And I got awards, and I have all sorts of pieces of wood on my wall that says I'm great, and I did some wonderful things, right? And after 12 years, the corporate decisions didn't make sense for my family. Now, let's call a spade a spade. Okay, making sense for my family means if I do what my corporation says, my family is not going to remain a family. And this is what most people face. And when a corporation says you have to make a choice between you and your family, what are you going to do? You're going to be angry. And so it's not that I was angry. I had something called righteous indignation, which goes beyond anger. It's not rage. It's like me versus the government, or me versus the political environment, or me versus the community leaders. It's like, I have not just something that's causing a problem. I have a mission in life, and I carried this like a grudge. And I was proud of the fact that this company uh, made me make decisions that hurt my family in order that I could keep my family together. It was frightening. And again, it was a trauma that took me a couple, 3 years to get through. Now, walking into a small company, a small business, helping them immensely, and then helping them become very profitable within a couple years, and then watching the change in the industry, and then moving into education, was a great education for me. It wasn't. I was chief of operations of a small telecommunications construction company, and we had up to about 75 employees, and we did some wonderful things. And it taught me a lot. And that's what I had to look at. At that point, I had to look at a way I could leave the company and actually stabilize myself once again. And I realized that holding on to that anger and that pain was just holding me back. And so I had to do some soul searching. And so the second transition I made actually helped me clarify what it meant to be Tim the entrepreneur, not a general entrepreneur, but Tim the entrepreneur. I'm not going to get in this situation. I'm not going to give my trust blindly. I'm not going to trust companies. I'm going to trust individuals. And it forced me to hammer out a set of morals and ethics. I will not cross this boundary. Before, I was willing to. And corporations putting me in a position that was absolutely destructive, no matter what I chose, told me, no, I can't do this, and that's what caused me to go the path I did.
Right.
That sound familiar?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Yeah, this was a moment which actually helped you define yourself, isn't it?
Yes. Who am I and what was I put on this earth for? I call that finding your purpose. Maslow calls it self-actualization. And the funny thing is, Buddhism has two ways to get to enlightenment. I may have talked about this before on this show. One way is nice and pretty, right? You sit on the floor and you meditate for 40 years and you become enlightened. But there's another way to become enlightened, right? It's a stick on the back of the head. Yeah, they call it Kensho and Satori, right? Satori's the nice one, and Kensho is the brutal one. And life, life allows some of us the ability to meditate to enlightenment, but for most of us, it gives us a stick in the back of the head. And you know what? In reflection, the Stoics are correct. We get a stick in the back of the head because of what our decisions were earlier in our lives. We put ourselves in these positions. Humility is one of the benefits that I got out of going through this process. Number one, I'm not a snowflake. I'm not special. This is just the way things happen. Number two, everybody goes through this at one point or another. I'm just another piece of sand on the beach. But number 3, I may not be able to change the world, but I can change the other grains of sand around me. And that has given me my gratification and my fulfillment, helping people in small ways and having students come back a couple of years later saying, you changed my life. You get that 2 or 3 times, you're on the way. This is the big part. And it's not that I want more of that. I know how to get that now, though. Okay, that's just part of the trappings. What I'm into it for now is to give other people the surprise of having their students come to them and say, you're special. You've done something for me. That's what my game is now. I need no more fulfillment. I'm fulfilled. What I would love to do is find more people who are basically, number 1, incredibly successful, and all humans are successful. Number 2, in a position in their life where they are not recognized, or they feel inconsequential, and help them understand that with a few changes in their lives, they don't have to change the world. All they have to do is change the way they approach it. They can become not just successful, but fulfilled. That's what my purpose is for the rest of my life.
Right. No, that's a very valid cause that you have made it to yourself. Yeah. Also.
And you know what? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a community that actually was a group of people committed to this cause, not just fulfilling a legacy for their families, fulfilling a legacy for themselves, but actually fulfilling a legacy for humanity. It's like, let's do this. And I was thinking about this 4 or 5 years ago, and having a few conversations with you triggered the knowledge that I didn't have to wait for 15 or 20 years to pull this together. That's what's exciting. This is what triggered me. It's like you can do it right now. You're out of a job. You can do it right now. You're despondent. You can do this right now. What I'm doing. It's right there for you. It's no more than actually changing a few items.
Right. Right. Would you also like to share some details? I know you talked about this with me in brief, but yeah, you are planning for a project management prep program to start soon. What preparation have you made, and how you think this is going to benefit to the people out there, to the aspirants who are looking for the project?
How does this fit into what we're talking about now? Why is a project manager trainer, not a professor, not an educator, but a trainer, talking about what he's talking about here? Well, it's really funny because project management is built on the fundamentals and theories of good business. It really is. When you go through project management, you go through business school. And what my approach to teaching and supporting project management is just that. It's a lifetime of work, growing and building these skills, and working with other very skilled people to find out what the best way of doing things is, and sharing that. And so that's part of the recipe for understanding how the academy works. And now the academy is not just project management, right? It's other skill certificates. I'm just talking about this. So you're going to see a series of webinars over the next 6 to 8 weeks coming out of the academy, and it's me talking about what's changing in project management. And there's a lot of things that have been going on since 2015. The teaching and the presentation of what project management is, and that's big. And the changes in the project management professional credential and how that is being taught and presented, that's changing. And now taking the test is also different. And they have just in the last 6 weeks started giving people the opportunity to take the test from home. And so we're actually, I am talking to a lot of my students right now who are going through that process. And how can I do this and walk into this unique situation and feel comfortable with that? And in my classes I teach, how can you get comfortable with the process of taking the exam? And so one of the webinars is going to talk about that. And then on top of that, the fundamentals of the project management professional exam are changing. The way it's graded, the type of questions that are coming up, and I hope to speak to that too in the next 6 weeks. There's 4 or 5 topics that people need who are interested in becoming credentialed in project management. Now, why project management is a really good question. I've done lots of webinars on that. Project management actually is leadership plus management. Management where you say, pick up that box over there, carry it over there and set it down, and you put the time it took in an Excel spreadsheet, right? That's your management. Leadership is giving people a reason why they pick up the box, and management measures and makes things better that way. But leadership allows the people to take pride in their work and also figure out better ways of doing things. It's the innovation component. And project management, that's one, and there's 2 more, right? Project management is one of the only ways right now that you can move from being a worker to be a manager. And it's a pretty good way to do it. You could go to business school, but that's the long path. That's the path I took. Then the third thing is, it's project management also is the accidental profession. Go manage that project. Well, it's like, oops, I stepped into management. And so many of us are managers without knowing it. And if you knew that you were in management, and if you knew the skills and the capabilities, and you had the opportunity to exercise it properly, would you be more ready and be able to take advantage of that role, both from a career perspective, and if you lost your job, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to land on your feet and use the same skills you were successful in your job in transitioning to another? And this comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of our talk, Kumar. It's again, it's leadership, and it's teaching everybody from the vice president down to the janitor, what management is, what leadership is, how to use them effectively, how to lead yourself. That's a topic that we don't talk about, and we need to be talking about these things. And wouldn't it be great to have a place like an academy, or what they used to call a stoa in ancient Greece, where we could walk through a market and pick up a piece of fruit and have these conversations and stop and have some tea. And that's what I observe having the academy as a place where we can share white papers, a place where we can actually have conversations and we can debate, in an ethical manner. We can debate with respect, and we can actually both come out of those debates learning and knowing more. These opportunities come up when we go through great societal transitions. So it's time for this to actually be launching. This is exciting, and the more and more I talk to people about this, the more I'm convinced that this is not just something that has to happen. It's it's sort of like preordained. When you have societies that get restrictive, you have communities within that society that say, let's approach this from common sense. And either the leaders of the current society listen or they go away, one way or the other. This is a major transition we're going through, and our leaders are making decisions for their destinies, and we have an opportunity to band together and actually put common sense in our lives as well. And there's Carl.
Yeah, Carl has joined in finally. However, his video is still not visible. Carl, I'm not able to see.
Let me see if I can do. Let's see.
That did something, Carl.
Yeah, I saw that.
All right, you're still having those difficulties, Carl. No matter. What we can do instead, we are left with another 15 minutes for the show. So, what I suggest is basically uh, give out a brief on what exactly we want to talk, what you want to discuss on, a little bit about yourself in this next 15 minutes, and possibly next week. When you have time, either on Tuesday or Thursday, I mean, I can coordinate with you later. But yeah, we can come live once again and we can talk at length.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I thought I had it scheduled for 10 a.m. PST. So when I
Aha.
looked at it, it said EST. So I went, oh, okay. So yeah, I apologize for that. It's strictly my fault. Trying to
That's
Hey,
get
no
quite
the
problem,
times
Carl.
all
okay.
right. So I
No
do
problem,
apologize
Carl.
for that.
No
So
problem.
let me.
The time, yeah, the time me and Tim were utilizing much effectively, we discussed on the education and few of the layoffs which is happening. So we picked up those topics and we were trying to create a roadmap on those areas. And also we discussed about the PMP program, what Tim is about to start. So yeah, I mean, the time was utilized anyway, but we missed you for the last for say 45 minutes. All right. So,
Yeah.
Carl, quickly, if you could help, yeah, if you could please introduce yourself uh, and talk about your work experience, what
So
exactly you do.
my name is Carl Patterson. I've been in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry for about close to maybe 20 years. My history, I started in the military. I was in the military for quite a while, and I worked as what they call a preventive medicine specialist, basically a health inspector. So a lot of
Mhm.
the disease stuff that they're talking about today, a lot of the epidemiology stuff they're talking about today in regards to coronavirus, I've all heard it before. So after a while, working as a health inspector, I changed over to nursing and became an ICU nurse for the military as well. So
Wow.
I worked at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio on their surgical ICU. I worked in Germany during the war, saw a lot of patients there. Uh, Finished up my degree in microbiology from the University of Texas, and then moved back home to California, back here to San Diego. So then found out there was a huge industry here in San Diego for biotechnology and just the healthcare industry in general, and got into it and didn't really know what I wanted to do. Got into the manufacturing side of it with E. coli fermentation and yeast fermentation, and then moved forward into quality control, quality assurance. So that's where I'm at now. Like I said, I've pretty much seen the gamut as far as the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, from anywhere from manufacturing all the way to the quality assurance, quality control part. I've done validations and stuff too. So my experience is pretty extensive in this area. So
Wow. So we do have to get you back on. I could spend 2 or 3 hours just listening to you talk and your experiences. So basically, you got into pharmaceutical to actually help them grow things like E.
correct.
coli and yeast that they could actually test against as they
Right.
were working on new drugs. Okay.
Well,
And
it's a little bit different than that. What they actually do is they use E. coli and some of the other cells instead of, like a chemical engineering where you make chemical reactions. A lot of the biologics are made in mammalian cells, or made in these cells. So what happens is they put the genome into the cell produces this protein, and then they purify the protein on what they call the downstream side. So a lot of expertise in order to do that and get that in, and then all the quality side of it as well, especially when it comes to E. coli fermentation. You have to kind of, there's a couple things you have to look for. And then just the cells in general. So they're basically big, what they call bioreactors that they use, and they make these drugs in. And that's pretty much all. Most of the biologic drugs, like your antibodies or stuff like some of the common drugs that are used. What was one that we had worked on? We had worked on one for colon cancer. That was an antibody, and that was done with E. coli, with mammalian cells. So a lot of different things go into it, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting how you're able to make a cell, tell it to do what you want it to do, and then harvest the drug afterwards.
That's amazing. And I'm from the inorganic chemistry side, studying electrical engineering, and it's almost like black magic for me the way organic chemistry works. My mind
Right.
cannot track it. Now, my question, I know we only have 10 minutes, but my question is, how do you actually work with compliance with the FDA in the organic side of the world?
So a lot of it is they have quite a bit of, since they're not really, it's not that it's a new science, it's been around for years, but they have to kind of look for special things when it comes to using these cells. There's when you're talking about E. coli cells, when you're doing fermentation with E. coli, you have to worry about endotoxin. So you have to be able to screen out your endotoxin and filter for endotoxin. When you're doing some of the biologics or some of the mammalian cells, you're looking more for what they call mycoplasma, and then you have to screen for that as well. And then, of course, on when everything's finished, you also have to test for sterility. So there's a sterility test that's done. So, and there's a lot of other there's a lot of other factors or characteristics that they look for in the drug before you can actually release it, and that's usually covered. A lot of it's covered in the USP.
Wow. So a lot of this is preordained, but some of it may have to be developed. The compliance components may have to be developed based on the specific item you're researching, and you're actually filtering out these things like these endotoxins and these things that create sterility, so you don't get false positive tests and you don't get false negative tests when you're using your tests. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. So like I said, there are certain characteristics. They call it strength, quality, uniformity, identity, purity, and safety. So we have tests that covers all of those factors to ensure that the product is safe.
Wow. That's amazing. And so you were part of the quality process, both making sure that they were following process and procedure and using the inspections and tests to make sure you were going in the right direction. Was that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that is very correct. So even now, in fact, I was listening this morning to the vaccine when they talk about the COVID vaccine, that has to go through that whole process as well, the whole quality process as well. The companies have to make sure that they follow those factors and those characteristics for that product. So, and that takes some time. It does take quite a bit of time in order to get through all of that and make sure that it is fit for use, basically.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's fascinating that we actually are able to not just predict success, but predict when this success is due to occur based on the data we're collecting and based on the processes that we're managing through this development. Wow. So is it now coming from the science side of the news today? Are there any surprises that you've seen in the last 2 months in the breakthroughs in research, or is this basically how the regular experience happens? Is it going quicker than what you would have expected, or is it slower, or is it about on track?
So it's actually going, as far as development goes, it's actually going a lot quicker. Usually development takes quite a bit of time, and then getting into what they call the preclinical studies, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, that actually goes through, drugs usually go through I want to say it's like a 7 to 10 year approval before they're able to be approved for commercial use. So in a normal track-wise, a normal system where we have a drug that gets developed and moves through the system, normally it takes 7 to 10 years for development. For a vaccine, it does take a little quicker just because of the emergency of it and how they're trying to develop and stuff. I will be surprised if they're able to get one out to the public, and then that's approval by the end of this year. I will be very surprised at that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's going to take time.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes time if we want something that is predictable and doesn't hurt people and actually does what we want it to do.
Right.
Yeah, if you also see any vaccine history, the vaccine which got developed in past, it took 10 years minimum to actually come up with a vaccine which was successful.
Right. It takes time. And I know there's a lot of different, as far as research and development goes, there's a lot of different paradigms and stuff that they're using now. They're using sequencing, their protein sequencing to, build up the antibodies and kind of customize them, but they still have to make sure they're good for everybody. I mean, everybody is different, and everybody is going to react differently to this new thing that's in their system. So they have to be able to show that it's effective, that it gives the response that we want, and a good portion of the population, as well as make sure it's safe. So they have what they call fast-tracked the vaccine, I'm sure. So it will shave off a little time, but it still has to go through the whole process. It still has to go through.
And we cannot neglect the years of research that have gone into general coronavirus study that actually has been going on without us knowing it too.
Right.
So fast tracking is basically saying, yeah, we had these things on the back of the stove, and let's move it to the forefront so that we can get it going. And this is the beautiful thing. That we all have these things going on. Each nation has study in each one of those.
Yeah. So it does, like I said, it does take some time. And my wife, she used to work as what they call a clinical research associate. So what they do is they're in the doctor's office and they bring in all the people and they give them the vaccine and they do the trial and they go through the whole clinical trial process. So her and I were discussing it, and we're both on the same boat. Like, yeah, we probably will not see a vaccine. If they get one at the end of the year, we will be very surprised. So it does take some time, and they're going to have to go through the whole gamut as well. So.
Yeah,
True.
It's going to take time.
True. Yeah, it's not that easy. I mean, people are thinking it's going to come next month, and then next month, then next month.
we probably have enough questions for you, Carl, for 2 hours of discussion here. So if you don't mind, let's talk after the show, and let's see when we can get you back on and we can have this conversation. In the meantime, Kumar, it's been a delight talking about what is happening at the Academy. And let's continue that as well. And let's bring more of that to the forefront. But yeah, Carl, it's brilliant to be able to talk to you. And I want to hear your story. And I want to hear what your opportunities are. And let's continue this.
Okay. No problem.
Right. Yeah. Let's check what date is feasible. Possibly either Monday or a Thursday is what we come live, me and Tim. And either of the days, whenever you have time, please let us know, and we'll make it live.
Okay.
And yeah, as Tim said, there's a lot of questions waiting for you. We need to hear a response from a lot of viewers have asked for that. So
Okay.
yeah, let's continue our discussion next week. And with this, thank you so much for joining in. I know, I mean, calendar does a mismatch, and then there's some problem, but that's okay. That gave us me and Tim to discuss on something else. Right.
Oh, good.
All right,
Good.
great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for joining in. Thanks, Tim, for your time. You enjoy your rest of the day, and talk to you next week soon.
Thanks again.
Thank
Again,
you,
everyone.
Thank you,
And thank you all for joining in too.
Thank you. Cheers. Good day.
Bye.